Have you ever, like, come across something and it feels like it's been right there all along, but kind of hidden, you know?
Yeah, like a secret. But one with like a super long history.
Exactly. That's totally the vibe we've got going on today. It's all about this tiny, dark brown seed used for centuries in Africa, like woven into their traditions and stuff. And guess what? It's finally getting some attention here in the West.
It's crazy how often these old school remedies, they actually have potential that science is just now starting to figure out.
Totally. It makes you wonder, like, how much knowledge has been there all along,
Yeah,
right?
for sure. The depth of understanding in those traditions is kind of mind-blowing.
So true. And that's what we're going to dig into today. You ready for a deep dive into Abere seeds? They're also called, and these names are so cool, Osu, Nipokiri, and Aaron.
Love those names.
Right. We've been pouring over a couple of sources just for you. We've got a clip from this YouTube video by 9J Foods. It's called A Bear Seed for Weight Loss. And then this super detailed scientific review article from Clinical Phytoscience.
Sounds like a good mix.
It is. Our mission is to pull out all the important stuff so you can really understand what these seeds might offer, without getting totally lost in the weeds.
Yeah, make it digestible, no matter where you're at with all this stuff, whether you follow all the latest wellness trends or just kind of curious, we'll break it all down. The history, the science, and those potential benefits everyone's talking about.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to the very beginning. Abere seeds. Origins. The Clinical Phytoscience Review really hammered home how deeply rooted these seeds are in sub-Saharan Africa.
You know, that long history of use, it's always a big clue, right? It kind of hints that something's actually going on there, something beneficial, even if we haven't figured out the exact science behind it just yet.
Absolutely. And the traditional uses, and it's kind of amazing, the review mentions it for everything: obesity, fever, even skin conditions like leprosy sores and menstrual pain. And get this, also infertility, intestinal worms, just general stomach discomfort. It's like they use these seeds for, like, everything.
A true all-rounder. And that's often how traditional medicine works. You've got a single plant, a single resource, used for all these seemingly different things.
Right. And now modern science is trying to understand if there's a biological reason for that, for such a wide range of applications.
Yeah, it often comes down to the plant's chemistry, a complex mix of compounds that can act in different ways throughout the body.
It's incredible. Oh, and they even used it for diabetes. Local herbalists, they've been using it to manage diabetes. And then, get this, traditional midwives use the leaves and the pulp, not just the seeds.
Wow, so different parts of the plant might have like different concentrations or even types of compounds, and those might be the reason for the different uses.
Totally makes sense. And beyond health, just practical stuff.
Yeah.
The review mentioned that the timber is used for construction because it's super resistant to termites.
Termite resistant. That must be some tough wood. Probably packed with some potent compounds, which might explain some of the medicinal effects too, right?
Probably right. And it wasn't just local either. The bark was actually exported to Europe for medicinal purposes. So they knew about it outside of Africa too.
That's really interesting. It shows that at least some of that traditional knowledge traveled and influenced other parts of the world even back then.
Yeah, for sure. And those names we mentioned before, Osu, Nipokiri, Abere, or Aaron, the review links them to specific Nigerian peoples, like the Edo, the Igbo, and the Yoruba. It's pretty cool to see that connection.
Absolutely. It highlights the importance of understanding these plants within their cultural contexts.
Okay, so we've got the background. Let's move on to what's actually in these little seeds. Now, the health benefited article, they call a berry seed a superfood. We know superfood isn't like a scientific term, but what's so special about its nutritional profile?
Yeah, superfood is more of a buzzword for sure, but it usually means you get a lot of nutrients for the calories, like it's packed with good stuff. And with Abere seeds, the article makes a point of saying they're loaded with essential vitamins and minerals.
Like a little nutritional powerhouse.
Basically.
They specifically mention potassium, vitamin A, and a bunch of B vitamins. And they connect that to possible benefits, like boosting your immunity, improving digestion, and even supporting heart health.
Those are definitely benefits you'd expect with those nutrients. Potassium, crucial for healthy blood pressure. Vitamin A, great for your immune system and eyesight. And B vitamins, essential for energy and nerve function.
It's all connected, right? Okay, now for the really juicy part. Let's dive into the science. The Clinical Phytoscience Review was Pretty dense.
It was a deep dive for sure.
Yeah. But let's start with the research on blood sugar, because that was a big focus.
Yeah, and it's an area where there's some promising research. The review talked about a bunch of studies they did with diabetic rats. They gave them water extracts from the seed, and it led to some pretty significant drops in their blood glucose levels. And here's the thing, some of the studies noticed that it wasn't always about the dose, like even lower amounts still had a big impact.
So it's not like the more you take, the better it works.
Right, exactly. It suggests that even small amounts of those active compounds can be really powerful. The review also pointed to this possible mechanism where the extract might actually prevent the absorption of glucose in your gut.
So less sugar gets into your blood after you eat.
You got it. And some of those rat studies also showed positive effects on the pancreas itself. They saw that it actually helped to restore the structure of those insulin-producing cells. Pretty amazing, right?
That's huge, especially because diabetes can really mess those cells up.
Absolutely. If that extract can help protect or even repair those cells, that could be a game changer for diabetes management. And there's more. They found that extracts from the seed could block specific enzymes, pancreatic alpha amylase and alpha glucosidase, in lab settings. And they think that's because of the phenolic compounds and flavonoids in the seeds.
So what do those enzymes do?
They're the ones that break down carbs into sugar. So if
Huh.
you block them, it slows down the release of glucose into your bloodstream.
Makes sense.
Right, it fits with the whole blood sugar lowering effect they're seeing. The review goes on to talk about how specific fractions of the seed extract, like the butanol and alkaloid fractions, also showed that same blood sugar lowering activity. And then there were studies on rats fed a high fructose diet. And with those rats, the seed extract didn't just lower their blood glucose, it also made them more sensitive to insulin, lowered their leptin levels, and increased their adiponectin. That's a lot of good changes.
Wow. So it's not just about the blood sugar itself. It's affecting all these other things connected to
Yeah,
metabolism.
exactly. And that's exciting because it suggests the potential to target the root causes of things like type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome, not just the symptoms. It's about improving the way the body handles sugar overall.
Fascinating. And then there's this compound called erinidine, an alkaloid they isolated from the seed. It also showed those blood sugar lowering effects, both in the lab and in living organisms. And then they mentioned this in silico study. Can you explain that a bit?
Sure, in silico studies use computer models to predict how molecules might interact with targets in the body. In this case, they were looking at a receptor involved in how the body uses glucose. They found that this compound in the seeds, 3-methylbenzofurin, might have anti-diabetic potential because of the way it interacts with this receptor. It's a pretty cool way to narrow down which compounds might be responsible for the effects we're seeing.
Like a virtual experiment.
Exactly. It gives researchers a starting point for more targeted research.
So we've got a pretty good idea of its potential impact on blood sugar.
Yeah.
But what about weight loss? That YouTube video we mentioned, it was called Abere Seed for Weight Loss. So what did the sources say about that?
The health benefited article touched on it a bit. They suggested that the seed's potential for reducing inflammation and supporting healthy blood sugar levels might indirectly help with weight management.
Right, it's all connected. And the clinical phytoscience review had some more specific findings. They found that the alkaloid fractions of the seed, they had this dose-dependent effect on weight reduction in rats. And in a study that went on for 60 days, they used a water extract of the seed and saw a significant decrease in the average body weight of those rats. They even observed a decrease in abdominal circumference and BMI in those high fructose diet rats we talked about earlier. Those are pretty key indicators, right?
Definitely, especially that reduction in abdominal circumference and BMI. Those are strong indicators of metabolic health.
Right. And here's another interesting thing they found. A methanol extract of the seed. It seemed to counteract the weight loss that usually comes with a certain type of induced diabetes in rats. And then in a different study, they had a control group of rats, and they actually gained more weight over time compared to the rats that were given different doses of the water-based seed extract. It seems like it might help regulate weight, not just cause weight loss.
You know, it's important to remember that weight is complex and can be affected by a ton of different things. But the fact that they saw this consistent trend in those animal studies, either weight reduction or less weight gain, it's definitely worth more research.
Yeah, for sure. Now, the clinical phytoscience review was so thorough, it mentioned a whole bunch of other potential benefits that researchers have observed. We can't go into detail on all of them, but let's touch on some of the highlights. They mentioned that the seed extracts showed antioxidant properties in lab tests, meaning they can neutralize those harmful free radicals.
That's always a good thing. Antioxidants protect our cells from damage caused by oxidative stress, which is a factor in a lot of chronic diseases.
Right, it's like an internal defense system. And they also found evidence of antimicrobial properties, meaning it was active against certain bacteria and fungi in the lab. And in animal models, they saw anti-inflammatory effects, with less swelling and fewer pro-inflammatory molecules. It makes you wonder if those anti-inflammatory effects might explain why it was traditionally used for skin problems, right?
That's a great connection. Those findings suggest it could be useful for infections and inflammatory conditions, but we definitely need more research, especially in humans, to really confirm that.
Absolutely. They also saw signs of pain-reducing and fever-reducing effects in animal studies, as well as anti-hyperlipidemic properties, which means a decrease in cholesterol and triglyceride levels. That's good news for heart health.
Definitely. Improving lipid profiles is key for a healthy heart.
And now for something a little unexpected. The review even mentioned potential benefits related to sexual health and reproduction. Some animal studies showed improvements in markers of sexual activity and even uterine contractions. And lastly, they found hematopoietic properties, meaning it might have a positive effect on blood cell production. That's a lot of potential benefits packed into one tiny seed.
It's amazing, right? It just shows how complex these natural substances can be. And it highlights the importance of rigorous scientific investigation to really understand them, to validate the traditional uses, and to potentially discover even more applications.
So if someone wanted to try a bear seed, how would they incorporate it into their life? The health benefited article mentioned it's pretty versatile. You can add it to smoothies, salads, even bake with it.
Yeah, that makes it easy to add to your diet.
But, and this is really important, both sources were super clear about the possibility of side effects. They stressed that you absolutely need to talk to a healthcare professional before using a bear seed. The health benefited article even listed some possible side effects like nausea, diarrhea, and headaches, and they really emphasized the risk of interactions with certain medications.
They're right to be cautious. Just because something's natural doesn't mean it's safe for everyone, especially if you have existing health conditions or are taking medications. It's always best to talk to your doctor or a qualified healthcare provider before starting anything new.
Could not agree more. Safety first, always. And the health benefited article also mentioned that you can usually find a bear seed in health food stores and online.
That makes sense. As it gains popularity, you'll probably see it more and more places. Just remember, it's important to think about the quality and sourcing of any supplement you buy.
Good point. And lastly, let's quickly touch on human studies. The Clinical Phytoscience Review talked about a small study with only 5 people who had type 1 diabetes. They found that taking the aqueous seed extract lowered their fasting blood sugar levels. And the researchers actually said it might be twice as strong as metformin based on what they saw.
That's interesting, but it's really important to emphasize that this was a super small study. Can't really make any strong conclusions about how potent it is compared to a medication like metformin based on just 5 people.
Exactly. And the review itself concluded that we need a lot more clinical research to really understand the potential of Abere seeds, especially when it comes to blood sugar and how it affects humans.
It's a big jump from promising results in a lab or in animals to actual proof that it works in humans. We need those human studies to be sure it's safe and effective.
So let's summarize all that for you. We explored the long history of Abere seed in Africa and how it's been used in their traditions for centuries. We looked at how modern science is starting to explore its potential benefits, especially for managing blood sugar and potentially even helping with weight based on those animal studies.
It's a cool example of how traditional knowledge and modern science can work together.
It really is. But, and this is super important, remember that health disclaimer. If you're thinking about trying a Abere seed, please talk to your doctor or a qualified healthcare professional first, especially if you have any health conditions or are taking any medications. Your health is the top priority.
No question about it. Informed and responsible use of any natural remedy starts with that conversation with your healthcare provider.
So, as we wrap up, here's something to think about. We've only just scratched the surface of what this one traditional remedy might be able to do. What other plants, what other ancient practices might have amazing benefits that we haven't even discovered yet? It makes you wonder about all the knowledge that's out there just waiting to be uncovered.
It really highlights the value of learning from different cultures and combining those different ways of knowing with modern science.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful.